Adaptations are everywhere, especially in 2024. They've existed since the creation of art itself. There are some that are really good, there are some that are really bad, and there are some that just exist. Plenty of shows and films that I watched growing up were adaptations of books or plays like The Little Shop of Horrors and Goosebumps. Adaptations serve as a vessel for reprise and renewal, allowing an artist to not just revisit a story, but enhance it, enabling that story and narrative to be told in a way that they may not have been able to do in the original release, like in the case of Final Fantasy VII Remake and Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, which is on Netflix, by the way. Both of those titles, both of those works of art seem to be deemed as better than the original, unless you're one of those musty goons on the internet that don't like anything. You know who you are. That brings me to the inspiration for this short video, Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender adaptation, a new live-action series that has critics torn since its release. Full disclosure, I watched the original Avatar series when I was in high school. I watched Korra, and I played some of the video games, and saw some bits of the M. Night Shyamalan movie too. It's safe to say that I'm well acquainted with the series. So this new version was announced and I was cautiously optimistic. Like I said, I enjoy adaptations. Unlike most people on the internet complaining about it relentlessly, I actually sat down and watched it. I watched it in its entirety and binged it in one sitting one day, and breaking news, I enjoyed it. Now, was it a one-to-one recreation of the original Avatar: The Last Airbender's first season? Absolutely not. And I wasn't expecting it to be. Because that's the point of an adaptation. With adaptation comes creative liberties. I absolutely love the costume designs and the score. The music sounded like it came straight from the cartoon. You can tell that the team paid close attention to very specific details, visual and auditory, from the original source material. Unlike M. Night Shyamalan. I mean, just look at M. Night Shyamalan. Look at this movie. They don't look good. Let's be honest. Another point I loved about this live action adaptation was the casting. The casting was spot on. Gordon Cormier, I think that's his name. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He played Aang, and he was a very delightful Aang, bro. Like, his energy was on point. That childlike naivete was there. That can-do attitude was there. He was Aang. He is Aang. He is live action Aang. And David Liu, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name too, but he also goes by David James. He is a phenomenal Zuko. He plays Zuko to a T. Like, you get that bratty, sassy teenage vibe off rip, and I think he paid close attention to Dante Bosco's Zuko, so much to the point where he kind of sounds like him. Like, I feel like he's imitating his voice. Like, go listen to a clip. Y'all have probably seen that clip about the ice clip, and listen to Dante Bosco. Sound not exactly the same, but sounds pretty similar. And then also, I hope I don't butcher this name, Kia Wintio. She played Katara. Now, she deviated a little bit. There's a little bit of deviation in her characterization, but I think she did a great job as Katara. And there's a lot of other people that were casted that did a phenomenal job as well. There were some that I was still kind of like iffy about, like the actress that plays Azula, but we might see more of that in season 2. There may be some improvements in season 2. Overall, I think they made some really dope choices. Another aspect I really enjoyed, aside from the visuals, aside from the casting, aside from the audio, from the score, the music, is the bending itself.
Oh, so you doing the bending.
The action in this is fluid, is fast, is impactful, unlike, again, the M. Night Shyamalan film. We're going to compare it to the M. Night Shyamalan film, not the cartoon, because that's unfair, right? To a certain degree, that's unfair. The bending in M. Night Shyamalan's film is slow and clunky and weird and offbeat. But here, in this Netflix version, yo, there's a scene with Kyoshi, Avatar Kyoshi alone, that I think if somebody saw that, that would be the thing that I would surmise would get somebody into the show. That's what I feel. Were there some things that they could have done better? Were there some things they could have improved on? Were there some things they could have dove deeper into? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, it's the perfect adaptation, but it's pretty damn good. And we have to give credit where credit is due. We can't blame the writer's room because they were given 8 episodes to squeeze as much as possible for us to enjoy. And I think they did an exceptional job. And let's be honest, let's be real here. The rest of us can't do that. If y'all were given a task to do that, could you do it? 8 episodes where you got to cram in a full season of details and characters and storylines and narratives? I think they did a really good job. Only 8 episodes. So let's calm down. I'm talking to you, musty goons. All right, so before you get hype and get in the comments with your fingers, start saying how much you hate me, how stupid I am, I ain't doing a review. This is not a review, so don't get too excited. Honestly, do not. I'm not going into in-depth detail. That's not my jam. I'm just talking about Adaptations right now, and this happens to be the most recent one. It's a good show. I'm sorry. It's a good show. It's a good show. It's not as awful as everybody's making it out to be. It's not as awful as you think it is, even though you only watched clips or you didn't even watch it at all. You just saw a poster and was like, oh, I'm not watching that. It's a live action adaptation. Here's the thing. You can either watch it or you don't, and you move on. Simple. Let's keep it a buck all the way. Like, let's not pretend that we don't enjoy adaptations. We do. We have our favorite adaptations. We grew up watching them, of some of the most beloved properties out there in entertainment. But honestly, I believe the reason why there's so much going on and so many high tensions being put out there is because of the corruption and the crisis happening within the entertainment industry, specifically in animation, where there's a lot of layoffs happening. There are a lot of shows being canceled. There are a lot of shows being removed from libraries and history itself. So that's perfectly understandable, right? But let's not act like adaptations, even live action ones, don't have their place. We've all watched them. We've all watched Lord of the Rings, Willy Wonka, Harry Potter, Forrest Gump, The Color Purple, Space Jam, Shrek, Paramount's Sonic the Hedgehog, The Wizard of Oz, David Lynch's Dune, and loved them.
Delish.
All these films and shows have cult followings and diehard fandoms. Because of what? The adaptation. That's just naming a few, like a small fraction, but practically everything we enjoyed growing up has an adaptation or was an adaptation. Everything is an adaptation. Tell me in the comments below how you feel about being an adaptation of your parents. Hey, real quick, editor adaptation Hab here. Look at me, I'm a cartoon now. I forgot to kind of dive a little bit into my point about animation, because sure, we can all embrace the notion that animation is a very incredibly strong medium that can tell stories and present narratives in a way that live action can't. There are some animations, animated films, TV shows, cartoons that are way better than their live action counterparts. And I'm very well aware of the point of contention on an incredibly tiny, minuscule portion of the internet. Like I see the back and forth that happens on Twitter or Twitter X. Animation is great. I'm an animator. I make art. I love watching animated films. In an ideal world, we'd have a bigger appreciation and love for it, but that would never stop live action. That would never stop live action adaptations, because there is always, I hope you don't hear the cop cars, there is always an audience for it. There is always a market for it. Unfortunately, I'm also part of that market. Did you not see the original Scott Pilgrim versus the World? Come on. That's one of the best live action adaptations of a comic book ever created. So we can't sit here and say that live action adaptations of cartoons and other properties are trash or bad. This is my personal opinion, just like everything here is my personal opinion. But I just want to make this very clear. I believe that the only person that should have a deep-rooted, deep-seated hatred and aberration for a live action adaptation is the creator, the original creator themselves. That's the only person I believe has a God-given right to feel that way. Perfect example, Chuck Jones. If you don't know who that is, he's one of the OG animators of the original Looney Tunes run. And he did not like Space Jam, the original one in 1996. Well, nobody likes Space Jam 2 either, but I'll get into that later. But he said, and I quote, "I can tell you with the utmost confidence, Porky Pig would never say, 'I think I wet myself.'" He didn't like that idea. He didn't like the characterization of these beloved cartoons in that movie. He didn't like the premise. He thought it was stupid, to the point where he says that Bugs Bunny could have easily defeated the Monstars all by himself. So I'm not going to argue with that man. He created it. He has a right to feel that way. He has a right to believe that he is the canon, versus like some random angry person on Twitter or TikTok saying that so-and-so wouldn't do this and this and that and the third. And it's like, did you make this thing? So I'm not going to argue with Chuck Jones. That makes perfect sense to me. And to be fair, this is what happens when the OG creators and artists aren't involved with the creation of an adaptation. You end up with things like Paramount's Halo. So before you think I'm an absolute glazer,
I beg your pardon?
I could admit that there are terrible adaptations out there. There are absolutely bad, horrible, stinky adaptations out there. Sometimes they are made for cash grabs. Sometimes they are made for tax write-offs. I'll never forgive Warner Brothers for Space Jam 2. Did y'all see Space Jam 2? Essentially, Space Jam 2, what Space Jam 2 essentially was a showcase of Warner Brothers' power and money. It was a commercial. It was like a giant 2-hour commercial for Warner Brothers showing off how much they own and what they can get away with. Whoop-de-doo. So in those cases, yeah, this is where you get a really bad adaptation. This is where you see somebody create something just because these characters exist, just because this story exists, but doesn't really understand or know the motivations behind the character. They don't know or understand the narrative of these characters and their purpose, right? The original Space Jam made sense because you got a little bit of backstory for each side. So you got the backstory for the Monstars, right? You got a little bit of a slice of life for Michael Jordan. You saw him as a kid, you saw him growing up, you saw his career, and then you saw some of the background for the Looney Tunes and why all this was together. How all of it came together, rather. Space Jam 2 is just like LeBron falls into a computer and he has to fight an AI, which honestly is funny because that's what we're doing now. We're fighting AI. That's another topic for another day. At the end of the day, though, an adaptation is just that, an adaptation, good or ill. Like for every Michael Bay TMNT, there's going to be a Netflix Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Regardless whether it's good or bad, that's not going to change the original work and what it means to you and those memories that you fondly made with them, unless the original creator comes back, reinvents the story, retcons everything, and makes a better narrative. But we don't have to get into that right now. If you enjoyed something, whether it's a comic book, a TV show, a film, a book, a regular book, a video game, whatever you enjoyed, that's still the thing that you love. That's still the thing that you enjoy, and you can share that with everybody. It's not going to change the fact that that still exists. It's not. I believe that we can live in a world where all these things, these bodies of work, can live in tandem and be loved by the people that enjoy them. There are going to still be people that really love Avatar: The Last Airbender from Nickelodeon, the original. And now there are going to be people that love the Netflix version. But there always will be people that hate the M. Night Shyamalan version. Yeah! And you know what? If a particular adaptation turns into a dumpster fire, it can disappear into the annals of history and never be seen again or thought of, or hopefully never spoken about in a short video essay. But whatever, that's just me. How do you feel? Let me know in the comments what you think about adaptations. Should we forego the way of the live action adaptation? You can yell at me in the comments and tell me how much I'm wrong, or say that I'm crazy for even enjoying this Netflix special. Until then, stay rad, stay dope, stay gold. We out. Yip yip.